Welcome to my channel. Timeless Narrative. In this series, we will be learning about modern Indian history, starting with the arrival of the Portuguese in India. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. The coming of the Portuguese to India, the stage was set for a new chapter in history, one that would change the fate of the Indian subcontinent forever. The 15th century witnessed a remarkable era of exploration, driven by the curiosity and ambition of European powers. The Portuguese, led by a series of daring explorers, began a maritime adventure that would leave an indelible mark on India. Early exploration, the Portuguese maritime adventure, it all began in 1492, when Christopher Columbus, driven by the quest to find a sea route to India, sailed westward across the Atlantic. While he didn't reach India, his voyages ignited the fire of exploration. The idea of finding new routes to the east was now alive in the hearts of European navigators. In 1497, Vasco da Gama, the Portuguese sailor, achieved what Columbus couldn't. After a perilous journey around the Cape of Good Hope at the southern tip of Africa, Vasco da Gama reached the coast of Calicut, present-day Kozhikode in Kerala, on the 20th of May, 1498. This was the first direct sea route from Europe to India, a milestone that opened the doors to the vast riches of the Indian subcontinent, bypassing the overland trade routes controlled by the Arabs. Establishment of Portuguese influence in India. The Portuguese, now emboldened by their maritime success, wasted no time in establishing their presence in India. Pedro Álvares Cabral, in 1500, became the first Portuguese to reach the western coast of India, arriving at Kochi, Cochin. The local ruler, seeing the value of the Portuguese as trading partners, granted them permission to set up a trading post. The Portuguese quickly became the leading European power involved in the lucrative spice trade. But the real turning point came in 1510 when Afonso de Albuquerque, a seasoned Portuguese military commander, captured Goa from the Sultan of Bijapur. Goa, located on the western coast, became the heart of Portuguese colonial rule in India. Its strategic location made it the gateway for trade between Europe and the East, and it remained the center of Portuguese power in India for the next 450 years. In 1511, the Portuguese further solidified their dominance by capturing Malacca on the Malay Peninsula. This key port enabled them to control vital maritime trade routes between the Indian Ocean and Southeast Asia. The Portuguese trading monopoly and challenges throughout the 16th century, the Portuguese expanded their influence in India. They established several trading posts along the western coast, including in Daman, Diu, and Surat. The Portuguese controlled much of the spice trade, especially black pepper, which was in high demand in Europe. With their fortified bases and monopoly over the sea routes, they dominated trade across the Indian Ocean. In 1505, Francisco de Almeida was appointed as the first viceroy of Portuguese India. He laid the foundation of Portuguese maritime power, establishing a network of fortified trading posts along the coast. Afonso de Albuquerque, who succeeded him, expanded Portuguese territory and influence, ensuring that the Portuguese held sway over the Indian Ocean for decades. Cultural and religious influence. The Portuguese brought with them not just trade, but also religion. In 1542, Saint Francis Xavier, a Jesuit missionary, arrived in Goa. He quickly set to work spreading Christianity along the western coast of India, converting many locals to the faith. Goa became the center of Christian missionary activities in India, and the Goan Inquisition, established in 1560, sought to enforce religious orthodoxy. By the mid-16th century, the Portuguese also began to interact with the Mughals, especially during the reign of Akbar. The Portuguese and the Mughals engaged in trade, but growing Mughal power would soon overshadow Portuguese influence in India. Decline of Portuguese power. The 16th century was a time of Portuguese dominance, but the tides were about to change. In 1580, Portugal entered into the Iberian Union with Spain, uniting the two crowns under King Philip II of Spain. This weakened Portuguese power, as Spain now focused more on European conflicts than on its overseas colonies. The arrival of the British and Dutch in the early 17th century marked the beginning of the decline of Portuguese dominance. The Battle of Sorot in 1612 was a key turning point, as the Portuguese lost to the British, who had their own trade networks in India. By the 1630s, the Portuguese were increasingly overshadowed by the British and the Dutch, who had built strongholds of their own. Final stages of Portuguese rule in India. Though the Portuguese clung to their bases in India. In 1661, as part of a marriage treaty between Catherine of Braganza, daughter of the King of Portugal, and Charles II of England, the Portuguese ceded Bombay to the British. This marked a significant shift in the balance of power in India. By the early 19th century, the Portuguese were reduced to just Goa, Daman, and Diu. Goa remained a Portuguese colony until 1961, when India annexed it after military action. The Portuguese were the first Europeans to establish a lasting presence in India. Their pioneering voyages, trade monopolies, and cultural exchanges left a deep imprint on the Indian subcontinent. Although their power gradually waned in the face of competition from the British and Dutch, the Portuguese legacy in Goa remains evident to this day, in its architecture, language, and culture. Their journey marked the beginning of a long chapter in India's interaction with Europe, one that would continue for centuries to come.